Well, hello again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of TalkNL. This is, of course, the podcast, or I guess, yeah, it's called a podcast, video cast, whatever you want to call it, Facebook Live, whatever you want to refer to this as, we're happy with it. But it is the place where we want to talk about everything Newfoundland and Labrador and things that are happening here in this beautiful province that we live in and that we absolutely love, and we want to see the best for moving forward into the future. We've got an incredible show for you this evening, and I'm excited about some of the things that we're going to be talking about. I'm joined, as always, here by my esteemed co-host, Mr. Graydon Pelley. Graydon, how's life in your neck of the woods today, sir?
Rudy, the sun is shining, the sky is blue, the plants are growing, and I got up this morning. I'm happy.
That's good. I'm excited, Graydon, because today the provincial government announced the expansion of the vaccine rollout, and I'm happy to say I have registered for my vaccine. So,
Rudy,
today,
you do me proud. You do me proud. Congratulations.
Yeah, it's a good day. My wife and I were able to register today, and we've been chomping at the bit here. Come on, give it to us.
A lot of teachers got the good news today as well, and they're ready to go. A lot of teachers.
That's right. So that's why I bring it up. So you and I, both of us, are in now in the class where we can get it. So it's great. It's exciting, and I encourage everybody, if you're out there and you qualify, please visit the government website, and if you can get an appointment, go ahead and get vaccinated. So, Graydon, we have an exciting guest this evening. Ever since he agreed to come on, like so many of our other guests, I've been excited and looking forward to it. He is the MHA for St. John Centre, recently re-elected in that district. The NDP member for St. John Centre, Mr. Jim Dinn. Good day, sir. How are you?
Not too bad. Good evening, Rudy and Grade.
Good to have you, Jim. Nice to see you again.
Same here. Different venue.
Different venue. Yeah, we've had lots of meetings, but quite a different venue than we are tonight, for sure.
You guys go back, don't you, for as educators, don't you?
Oh, Grade and I were, yes, with the NLTA, and actually Grade and I were running for the same position at one time. I think for a VP, was it not? I think
yes. That's right. Yeah, and guess who won? Guess who won?
I didn't say it for that reason, but I'm glad you brought it up.
But we certainly we had some great times working on behalf of students and teachers in the province, for sure. We had lots of great memories.
Yeah.
So Jim, first of all, I mean, we haven't talked to you obviously since it all went down, but congratulations, I guess, on your re-election is in order.
Thank you very much.
So how do you feel about it? Was it a sense of satisfaction, or are you tuckered out from still recovering from the campaign, or what?
Well, it was certainly a long campaign, but and it's been a busy. It's been a busy few weeks, and certainly since the House closed, dealing with constituency matters and other issues that where I'm the critic of. I know that when I first got elected, I mean, the very first time, 2019, I never really had what you call political ambitions in this manner. But I remember thinking, we when we first got elected, we went from being elected to learning the procedures of the House to passing a budget all within a space of a month or so. And I compared it to it's like riding a bicycle, except the bike is on fire, you're on fire, everything's on fire. So it was just at the time it was just it was a trial by fire, right? That's for sure.
Yeah. So I mean,
this time easier, maybe.
Yeah. Well, you definitely had some challenges, I guess, because I mean, we all know the fiasco that was the provincial election. How like what's your view on it? I mean, I know it's been out of the news now, but I mean, it's still at the top of some people's minds, still at the top of my mind. Did you view it as a quote unquote legitimate election, or?
It's definitely a challenge. I can tell you that in my district, that there were a lot of people who were disenfranchised, people who had always voted, and for the first time in their lives found themselves unable to vote. There are people who were planning to vote for the first time. And they never had that chance by either extreme wait times on the phone or having a website that crashed. The moving the what seemed to be constantly moving deadlines, for things. Then you hear reports of the chief electoral officer hand delivering votes or ballot kits and so on and so forth. So there was a real scramble to make sure that people got had the opportunity to vote. So it's probably one of the reasons the NDP challenged the election itself, because of the numerous irregularities that we saw, not only with our candidates but with others. It's probably the same reason that Sheila Fitzgerald, I think, and Jim Lester are also looking at challenging this, because of the same. We heard it everywhere. So that's one of the key reasons we took this on. It's one of the main reasons that Alison has chosen to, to certainly challenge to do a recount in her district, to find out, to sort of get that peek behind the curtain, if you will. It's also one of the key reasons that certainly we called for in the House for an independent all-party committee, similar to the one that existed prior to the election, to investigate this and to resolve the issues and make sure that it never happens again, and to make sure that people have the right to vote. So we supported the PC private members resolution to do just that. You may have seen in the news yesterday, we, as an opposition of independent, Paul Lane, myself, PC Barry Penton, and Helen Conway Ottenheimer, we did present proposals to the Minister of Justice in an attempt to make this truly nonpartisan, transparent, balanced, and all-party committee, to get to the bottom of this and to make recommendations, including what we wanted to have on it. One of the recommendations that I brought forward, that the NDP brought forward, I should say, is to have members from the public on this committee. And as we pointed out in our interview yesterday, elections are not just for politicians. It's not about the person running. It's basically for the people of the province, to make sure that they have the right to vote, that their franchise is protected, that they have that opportunity to say who they wish to vote for. So it's fairness for and transparency for politicians, but more importantly for the people of this province.
Jim, I've talked about to other people, and we had Pauline on a couple of weeks ago, and we talked about the fact that, we have the NDP, Alison Coffin, we have Sheila Fitzgerald and Jim Lester coming out and challenging it. Is this viewed, you think, as just disgruntled candidates who lost the vote, or? And I think about it would have been much even more stronger if some people that were actually elected. I know you're supporting Alison and the NDP is supporting Alison, but others that were elected, I mean, surely, now I don't expect anyone from the Liberals to come out and do this, but other elected people to come out and say this election was not right and we really need to get this investigation and this committee moving. And I think that would give it more of a punch rather than just that view.
To have the committee, or you mean for other people to take on the court challenge? You mean?
Yeah, that too. Or at least come out and support those who have.
Well, many of us, including myself, will be certainly supporting it with financial donations. But here's the other thing with it, is that it has the real possibility of overturning the election. So we will all, be impacted by it if that's the case, or if it's just if indeed if it's overturns the elections in each of those districts.
So
Either way,
let me jump in here. You say it's possible to overthrow it, but is it probable?
well, that's the interesting thing, whether it will. But here's the other part of it: is that either way, here's what we're after: is to send a very clear message, even if it's, let's take for example, if one district is overthrown or all three, then we send a clear message that there was something that there was wrong here, and there's a message sent. To me, the key thing here is to send a message, and to loud and clear, that you've got to have a democratic process that is transparent. You cannot go into an election unprepared to deal with in these situations where people who voted their entire lives did not and do not get a chance to vote. So if it's about setting precedent, then we're hoping this will do it.
Yeah, I like the news article yesterday that came out about having more independent, outside the House of Assembly people sitting on this committee, and
Very
I think
important.
I agree with you. I think it's a joke that the Liberals have majority on this committee. It means to me that it takes away the validity of it, because we know what's behind that. So I mean, we've talked about this before. I remember talking with Rudy on the podcast that we need more of a commission on democratic reform, more so than just a committee because it's bigger than the last election, Jim. It's the whole electoral process that we as a province carry out now, and it's just so outdated.
I think too, one of the why we wanted to see members of the public on this is, if nothing else, it's a way of making sure that even if I look at it, politicians of all political stripes on that committee behave themselves and act in the best interests of, and that we don't descend into partisanship. I'll be honest with you. I am after after answers. You cannot improve the Elections Act unless you first understand totally what went on, what went wrong, and why it went wrong in the previous election. So you've got to have that thorough discussion. And if there are people who need to be held accountable, whether those are politicians or members of the Chief Elections NL, then that's got to be addressed. I guess the best way is if someone picks the lock or breaks the lock on your on your house and breaks in, you might say, well, we just got to change the locks. No, we might want to know why, what led up to it. Did they have information? Were there other factors? So the same thing here. And I think that, the key thing to me, it's about, I do believe in this, Graydon, yourself, even with the NLT, with our pensions, I made sure that one of the things I did want to see on this, one of the things that the NLT did put on this, on the sponsor body, was a member from the teaching population, so that there's always those, I guess, eyes and ears, for lack of a better word, that would be on it. And I think we all need to have that kind of oversight.
Absolutely.
Jim, I just one more question now on this topic, I guess. What's your wish list look like? If you had to say, if you had to bring in one piece of change now for when it comes to democratic reform, is it what would it be? Would it be like a change in our voting system? Would it be a change in representation, change in the structure of the House of Assembly? What would you like to see?
No, so just make sure, Rudy, we're not talking about the election. We're talking about democratic reform writ large.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So I've often thought, and I'll go back to my own roots, and Graydon's been part of this in terms of how the NLTA, it's a council of sort of an executive council. You have a BGM. And I often wonder if the province sometimes is a bit too small to even have the sort of the way this party system that we have. If maybe it should be something along the lines of the Northwest Territories, or Nunavut, where you have a council, and that would be citizens representation, a body making those decisions, and put the partisan partisanship to the side, political partisanship. Barring that, I think when we look at it, maybe the best, what I would like to see is some sort of proportional representation, so that all parties, that there's a representation of whether you voted, whether you're a liberal, PC, NDP, Independent, or NL Alliance. There, and if it's so in the voting, that people see those elements there. And I think that's probably the better way, because it's possible for a party to become government and yet receiving a minority of the votes. Right? You could have, I think, 38% of the vote for the Liberals, and that, which means that you're looking at 60% or so of the vote voted for someone else.
Yeah,
so there's I think in many ways that probably creates some of the cynicism in the public, and maybe that we need to change now. That's what I would like to see, but I think we need to first say we need to sit down and have to make any change like that. You've got to start with talking to people and figuring how this is going to work, and make it and move forward. There's no way you can say, snap your fingers, we're going to do this for the next election, but I think it can be done if we really want to.
Yeah,
I find it very frustrating, Jim, that the statement from the new Minister of Justice, even since this report from you guys, or this request in the news article, is that, well, I haven't decided what approach I want to take yet.
right.
Isn't that here we have an all-party committee. We have a group of people, representation of the elected officials in the House of Assembly, which we think is wrong, because there should be, like you said, people from outside to give that outside view. But yet the person who's leading this, chairing this committee, is a Liberal with 5 members on the committee who's saying, well, I don't know if I like this or not. So we'll see.
There should be a few more "we" messages, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
That therein lies the problem. From my point of view, and I was always careful. Certainly when personally speaking, when I represent the teachers, it was always "we," because what, Graydon? It was never just me. I had an executive of 10 or 11 people around me, and who helped make those decisions. I had the staff in the building. I had and I had joint branch presidents. I had teachers. So in many ways, it's rarely one person. I don't believe that any one person, nor any one party, has the answers to the problems facing the province, and nor this. I think it's got to be we, and it's got to be as I don't know if it was in the newscast, as I said, look, democracy, the elections doesn't belong to any one party. It belongs to all of us. And I understand the makeup of select committees and the standing committees in the House. They need to have the majority of the governing party on them for estimates and budget purposes, right? This is not one of those. This is to modernize the Elections Act. And you, Rudy, you, Graydon, and every person in this province has their own idea of what modernizing means. Not the minister, not just me, and not any other member on that committee or in that House of Assembly.
This is way too big to leave to one person.
No, totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
I want to get into a little bit of current events here now, guys, just to move on, because we saw some big news in the last week or so around Memorial University, and some calls for the tuition freeze to either stay or go. depending on which side of the aisle you sat on. So, what's everybody's thoughts on this? I mean, it's been in place now. I think someone said it's close to like 20 years that we've had a tuition freeze at MUN. Like I said, depending on which color sign you got, some people are saying that we're the crown jewel of the country because we're offering affordable education, and you've got some more people that are saying that we're the laughing stock of the country because all we're considered is cheap education. So I mean, Jim, I mean, where do you land on this? Are you in favor of the tuition free staying, or?
It's an interesting one and one that challenged me. When I went to university, I guess it was what I earned $1,000 in a summer job. That got me through 2 terms at university, living at home. Got me through 2 terms and paid for books and buses, whatever else. That's what that was, $300 and some odd at that time. Now, of course, that was back in those 1976 to 81. That was big money. Now it did go up. So on one hand, you drive through the campus and you can see that the buildings, especially look at the like the chemistry building I drive by. It's worse for wear, and you've got to maintain this. Should there, and obviously the university needs if it's going to maintain its status as a reputable institution, yes, it's going to need a facelift. Then you have, well, do you raise tuition fees? Good question. There are jurisdictions such as in Germany, from what I understand, where guess what, tuition is free. It's free even if you're not a resident there, and yet they are not. I would put it to you, they are not the laughing stock. And the other part of it too, an educated population is a healthier population.
Yeah.
It's one that, when you look at some of the social determinants of health, they are education is one of those key determinants. It's certainly in defending our poverty and so on and so forth. So I'll go back to my favorite bit. We either pay for something now or we're going to pay for it later. If you don't educate, and Graydon, you know this, you invest money into the school system and people say, well, how can you afford that? Well, either you pay for it now and making sure that the best of personnel, well-qualified, well-paid teachers and well-paid staff, and you've got well-resourced are in place for the students, or you're going to be putting it into prisons and so on and so forth down the road, and hospitals. So you're there to say that we can't afford it. We're going to pay for it. So in this one, I don't know. I've got to look at that report, and I'm inclined. Look, you know what? Why not put? If we're going to put money into something, would I rather invest in university education, or would I rather invest in propping up oil companies who can afford it, and we subsidize them in that way? I don't know. To me, it's about it's a lot of those are the discussions I have with myself. So if you're looking for a clear answer, I'm still working through it, and I do believe in keeping it affordable, and make sure that as many of our citizens are able to take advantage of it as they can. But I'm sensitive to the fact that, as you said, that you don't want to be the laughing stock. You don't want to have buildings that are crumbling. You want to have something that's a centerpiece as well, right?
Some people, I guess, got the attitude. We've seen the statements on social media by a group of people or a number of people that, I mean, do we say to students, you have to pay for the upkeep of our university? Or so we look at it and we say, listen, do we think that, I mean, we have 17,000 plus students at Memorial University now. Yeah. And our students actually, I think our problem is, and we've seen it over the years in Newfoundland and Labrador, it's all or nothing. Yeah. Like we can't seem to find the middle of the road. So maybe there is a way to look at, raising tuition somewhat reasonable and helping, infuse more cash into the university.
Yeah.
And then the other part is, are students really not going to come to Memorial University if the tuition is raised, a reasonable and a sensible amount? Is that just fear mongering, or is it a reality? Do you think students are not going to come to MUN?
Okay, so I was fortunate enough that I lived in St. John's. I grew up here. So when I went to university, what I never had to pay for is I didn't have to pay for rent or residence. I didn't have to pay for a meal plan or anything like that. So $1,000, no problem at that time. For the students who have to come in here and have to rent, I mean, obviously the problem, their expenses are going to be significantly more. Okay. Right now, what's the tuition? If I remember, when the last time my children attended, is up in the area of $1,500 or so a semester, if I remember correctly. And I think somewhere along the line, I've listened to the president say, "Well, it's not," and some people say it's not really the low cost that attracts students. That's not the only reason. But at the same time, I think for some families, this is their ticket to improvement. This is how they get this education and how they're able to move on and become contributing members to society. That's the payoff. The other part too of it, Graydon, and you know yourself, that this discussion we're having can apply to every aspect of Newfoundland about well, can we afford it? We hear this all the time, and that's the question, because if we say for one agree that it's got to be done for one, then we open ourselves up to other aspects of it, and I don't know. Sometimes is it we listened to it today. It's very clear. We've got that we're spending more money than we're taking in. We're taking in enough money per capita, but we're not. It's a spending problem, and part of that is because of our wide-flung population as well. And but it's a tough question. I do want to see what the report is. I do want to have conversations with people, student groups, and with the maybe with people from the university as to what we need. What is the approach we need? I know that we are a provincial university, unlike in other jurisdictions where you have multiple universities and colleges within the province. But I don't know. Maybe it's the materials we use. Maybe it's the I'd have to see what the factors are. I mean,
I guess the bottom line, Jim, is that I agree with you that an educated population is a healthy population. So we have to do what we can do within reason to make sure we continue educating our children for the future and making sure, because that's how Newfoundland and Labrador is going to be sustainable.
People used to say to me, and this in terms of the public school system, Jim, we can't afford it. And my argument would be, you can't afford not to. So it's like dental care. It's like everything else. We can't afford dental care. Well, can you afford people going to the emergency ward because there's a connection between they have an emergency operation to perform, or it's affecting their heart health? So I look at when you look at this, I think it's a false choice, or to say that, well, we can't afford this and somehow we're going to get out of this scot-free. It's no, I just don't find that. I think we're going to pay for it, and maybe we need to start attracting younger people here to stay here and to be and start building up this economy one person at a time.
Yeah, absolutely. Jim, just quickly, I know time is going. Time flies when you're having fun, but with our public education system, Jim, I remember back when you began with the NLTA and all the fights and the struggles and the, the presentations and whatever. So we're still fighting some of the same battles, like with regards to, teacher allocation and teacher-student ratio, and we're still fighting some of these battles. So where do you see us now with regards to education?
I listened to I listened to the interview yesterday. Dean Ingram came up about doing an independent teacher allocation review, and listening to the minister's comments, he seemed to conflate that with the physical size of the classroom. Well, if that's the case, we've got a problem here, and it's not about the class; it's about the understanding of the problem. I think in many ways we've still got to look, and we've still got to look at the needs in the classroom itself, the needs of the child. It's no use saying, well, okay, 1 to 13, or 1 to 15 sounds like a perfectly good ratio. I'd love to have that. Well, it all depends really on the needs of the children that are in front of you. And I would compare it to my time at Holy Heart. I had one class of 15, and they taxed me more than the class of 32 that I had following that because, of the academic English class I was teaching. So to me, I still think we need to address. Great to have, the specialists or the Chromebooks and all of this stuff, but in the end, you're dealing with human beings. You're dealing with small people who coming from home where there may be deficits, where they may be hungry, where they may be dealing with poverty, where they may be dealing with abuse. They have learning difficulties. I look at my own family, for example, and I look at my grandchildren. And I'm reminded that, like, they come from a position of privilege. They're not wealthy or anything like that, middle class. But I look at my daughter and her husband, two professionals. They've got grandparents who are going to lavish them, with all the love and support that they can, and that's not every family. So when you're looking at when I look at the school, the children and students in front of me, often, it's not until years later you find out just how rough a time they were going through. You weren't aware of it. So when I'm looking at it, it's not always a numbers game to me. It's about how do you make sure you have enough school counselors, that you have a class size that allows you to tend to the needs of all the children in that classroom. I don't think cramming 32 into a classroom or 30 into a classroom is beneficial if you've got a number of children there with high diagnosed learning needs and emotional needs that can't be met by one teacher. So I still think we haven't gotten our heads wrapped around that. And certainly the Minister of Education didn't seem to have that understanding when he made that comment yesterday. So we've got a ways to go.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer that primary grades, I teach in a primary elementary school. I mean, kindergartens, there shouldn't be more than 15 kindergartens in a classroom. There shouldn't be more than 20 elementary students in a classroom with the setup of education system these days. And like you said, the variety, diversity of needs with the inclusion we have in classrooms now. I know that sounds some people might say you're crazy, but it's like you said, until the minister and the people come into the classroom and got to spend time in the classroom trying to do the job of a teacher. And many teachers don't see it as a job. They take on these students as their own, and they're their students from the time they get them till they leave. And the demands are great, the needs are great, and we can't look at the system the way it was 25, 30 years ago.
I was speaking to a teacher last week, and of course, a high school teacher, and they're on the blended model. So they would want a shift system with students come in virtually as well as in-class instruction. And like they said, they're tired, and it's like they're trying to build the airplane as they fly it. And they're doing, but he said one thing that and the students are tired, they're demoralized in many ways. They would have just preferred to have either just online, and a lot of them were doing fine that way. But he said it's interesting. A few of them said, you know what, with the class size where it's in many cases half the numbers, they're actually learning more. They were saying we got a little bit more time now, space. We can actually get the that's the key thing there, right? And yourself too, Graydon. One thing I was shocked to learn, I guess one of the most surprising facts I learned when I was president is that most of the examples of violence in the school system is not at the high school level or even at the junior high, but is often at the primary and elementary level, where you're dealing with young
Absolutely.
children who haven't learned to self-regulate and so on and so forth. So those are the times when you need that hands-on, and the smaller, less stressful classrooms, and it gives the teacher the time to give that individual instruction. Anyway, I can
Yeah.
go on all night about this one.
Let me ask you guys this, because I mean, as two educators here, I'm kind of the odd man out because I'm not an educator, but I do have a lot of friends who have children and whatnot that they are seeing go through this new found world of online learning, and some of them hate it, some of them love it, some of them think it's the best thing that's ever happened. Some students love it, some parents hate it, and there's a whole different lot of, you're not going to please everyone. But I mean, is that where you see us going, Jim? Is that where, you think that there's going to be a hybrid model now going forward because we've tried it and it's kind of worked, and you know?
We've got a ways to go before we say that. So let me tell you this much: I'm no fan of the online stuff. After a while, it tires me out. However, the advantage is that, okay, I can get up and take a break and go and get a coffee, and you got but left to my own devices, Rudy, too. I think I'll go and clean the house now or something like that. So,
Exactly.
it's and there is this thing as Zoom fatigue, and there's no doubt about it. I do enjoy, and I guess that's one, and Graydon can attest to this too. At least with when you're in the classroom with the student, I'll tell you, half the thrill of a teacher, the energy comes from the interactions you have with every student, and they're good or bad. And you have the ready-made, you have the camaraderie of your colleagues, and each new year brings a new set of students and a new set of challenges. So all that's that's one thing about it as a teacher. I realize is that you're always like, even while you're in the classroom, you're thinking, okay, I got to get down to the photocopier, I got to do this, got to meet for the so there's that energy there that you thrive on. Yeah, you're exhausted at the end of the day, at the end of the week, at the end of the year, so that's important. But I do believe that for some, it is that this has merit. There are children already who just are so stressed out by going to school, or it causes so much anxiety that that they they are not in school. So
Right.
I think there's merit here for that, and we need to explore that and how that comes into it. And I think Graydon will agree that one time, that school is not for everyone at that particular time in their lives too. They may very well, and maybe we need to have some sort of an alternate school setting. At one time when I left university, I figured, okay, this is it. Go get your education, go on to university. I realized, no, it's an education, means so many different things, and it can come in different ways. And I look at the number of students who who are going to the Brother T.I. Murphy Center or other places, and all of a sudden they're thriving.
Yeah.
More so when they were in school, when maybe they were dealing with all sorts of emotional baggage and family baggage and personal problems, and they're thriving. So I think in many ways that if you, Rudy, look, you know what, I can't do school every day. I'm whatever else. Then why not have an option like this?
Mhm.
And then if you want to come in, sure. But that's to Graydon's point earlier. That's going to require a little bit of shift, and how where are the resources coming from? Because it's not just say, well, here's your laptop and be done with it. It's going to require a lot of other work too, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is, I mean, I've heard both sides of the coin here. I've heard teachers say it's phenomenal. The engagement
Mhm.
with
Yep.
students online is phenomenal. I've heard parents say, "I can't wait for this to be over," and whatever. But but the thing about it is, yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, we think about back when CDLI came on stream. I
Yes.
mean, to some people that was the end of the world, and to other
Yeah.
people it was the cat's meow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we see as we evolve over time, but I can see, especially in rural Newfoundland, where again, of course, CDLI is a big part of it.
Mhm.
But what we've seen happen over the last year or so with regards to online learning, I can certainly see that continuing in a certain looking different probably than it does now, but I can see it continuing in some aspects, like you said.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of time,
planning,
thought, and effort that's going to have to go into it to make sure it's organized.
and it's the one thing that teachers do is plan, Graydon. And I would say to the minister, the old teacher's adage: if you don't have a plan for them, they'll have a plan for you. So right. So you have.
Yeah, for sure. I want to go back to talk about the MUN thing, because we got a comment here, interesting, from Sterling Morgan. So Sterling says, how can we raise tuition fees when students are suffering now and some don't even apply because of cost? The president of MUN receives a salary of $450,000 a year and $34,000 a year in benefits. Have you heard this before, Jim?
I'll be honest with you. I found it's when I heard the comments yesterday, I think, it's fine to be saying that when you're looking at basically a $500,000 in salary. Trust me, I'm sensitive to that. And for some students, look, I'll tell you, at MUN and that, we've got there are food banks already set up at MUN. There are people who are scraping by now. I mean, they're probably working minimum wage jobs. I worked to get through university. When I looked, there were 7 children in our family, and so I worked at the theaters and throughout the year, and at the Boring Park pool through the summer. So you did what you did. You did what you could to put that spending money in your pocket. So, but again, I was fortunate. I lived at home. But for the students who are leave the community where they leave their supports. By the way, there's the other part of it, and some are coming from other countries where they have actually they may not even speak the language that well. They may not understand the cultural differences or whatever else you want to look at it. So I think we've got to look at looking at that problem as well. Before we start raising tuition fees, look at maybe what other ways where we can better use our resources.
Yeah. So Jim, we got to move on. There's another couple of things we want to talk about for sure. Thing. And I said to Rudy before that this night is not going to be long enough. Tomorrow's going to be a big day.
Yeah.
It's going to be I don't know about a big day. It's going to be an interesting day. We're going to get the report from the committee that the Premier put in place, the PERT committee.
Am I supposed to go buy new shoes or something? Or
we can't. I'm sure we're not going to get here tonight and try and guess what's going to be in it. We all got our opinions, but tomorrow could be a big day in Newfoundland and Labrador. It's going to be a
It's going to be the start. I think Minister Cody said it tonight. It's going to be the start of a conversation, and I hope I take her at her word at that. If this is going to be the start, and I had asked the question in the House of Assembly, what is the plan for consultation around this report? And I asked that question because I had seen I've got a copy of the interim report from the Health Accord NL. Okay.
Yes.
And I spoke to Sister Elizabeth Davis, and I listened to her interview on the radio. And what amazed me, or what caught my attention, Rudy and Graydon, is the level of consultation that went into this report. There was no secrecy around it. Right. It was more or less about having an open dialogue. People were encouraged to take the information and go back to the people and discuss it. So, and they had a variety of mechanisms. So they've got their first report. They're now going to look at developing paths forward. Then they're going to go back again and say, well, look, did we get this right? Here's what we heard. What's their path forward? Then they're going to go back, I think, in September with a report. Did we get it right? And only then, at that point, are they going to present this to government and then move forward. So I'm thinking it may not get it all. It may not capture everything, but to me, that's a consultation process. But it's a process where people have got to get their heads wrapped around it. And Graydon, you might remember when we changed when we were looking at fixing the pension plan. One of the things, it took us a year basically, but in that year, we had multiple. We had meetings. We had sent out. There are multiple ways to communicate and get feedback from teachers throughout. And we knew it was going to be there was going to be some pain involved, but it took it took a consultation, a year of education, a consultation to get where we were. To me, I don't think now this is just me speaking. I don't see how this report is going to be useful in this budget, but whatever is in it, I hope to God it's going to like meaningful consultation, and that doesn't mean filling out an online survey or whatever else, because it's going to have to use all the measures at our disposal to engage people, whether that's going to their homes or whether that's town halls, whether that's in I don't care, focus groups, you name it, and basically, if we've got to make some painful choices here, if that's what this is going to be about, then you bloody well better make sure that that people in this province are engaged and have their say, and not just one segment of it, but others. If it's about, because the needs of rural Newfoundland and Labrador are probably going to be different than a large urban center like St. John's or Corner Brook or whatever else. So I think that to me is I'm hoping I'm hoping, and what I'm expecting and what I want them to do is you better have a good approach to this and better listen to all the voices on this one.
The thing that concerns me most about this, Jim, is, I mean, we all know the timeline here.
Mm-hmm.
The report was supposed to be released. It wasn't released. We called an election.
Yep.
The report still wasn't released.
Yep.
The election got delayed. The report still wasn't released. The election. Yep. The election, the results were announced. We were told that the report would be in 5 weeks. That passed. Still didn't happen. So we've been just sitting here now, twiddling our thumbs, waiting for this.
Yep.
So now we're being told that the report that's being brought out is not an interim report. So we skipped that altogether. This is a final report. And then we got Siobhan Cody came on the news at 6 o'clock, saying that we're going to go through all kinds of consultations about this report. Well, if it's the final report, then why are we doing consultations on it? It seems like you've made your decision here. This is a final report. You don't do a consultation after you release the final report.
Yeah. Fair point. And I think certainly what's happened up to now has not inspired confidence or trust. If anything, it's bred cynicism and skepticism throughout. But of course, yourselves, people were calling, "Where is the report?" And it seemed convenient that that as the election went on, the report wasn't ready. So it's already facing a backlash compared to, again, I'm going to go back to the health accord consultations. Different process, a different feel, definitely about engaging people. Why? Because if there's anything at the very level, it's healthcare is so vitally important to all of us. We either, regardless of our age. The future of this province, I would suggest, economically, is so vital to all of us about attracting keeping our young people here, of attracting people to come live here and raise families here. So we want to make it. We want to make sure we get it right. And if there's not the same level of consultation with the same intensity, then I think we're going to have, it's going to result in a lot of backlash, or worse, another report that gathers dust on a shelf.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we know now that the budget is going to be on the 31st of May.
Yep.
So, I mean, that's also a very convenient thing. The fact that, all of a sudden now, well, it's too late to implement any of these recommendations in the budget. So, I mean, I really don't know. I think this, is really past its due date here now. Or it's, the milk's gone sour for me.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of people in the province as well, because I think we see this for what it is. And no matter what's going to be in this report, I think everybody's just going to be like, well, okay.
So, Rudy, let me ask you a question.
Sure.
You've captured, that's right, the cynicism, I guess, as you said,
Right.
Milk has gone sour. What would it take for them to inspire confidence or get you back and say, I'm going to be involved, to be engaged in this? What would it take for you? What would
Yeah.
you need?
Well, to me,
I don't mean to put you on the spot now,
no,
but I get it.
no, I totally agree. No, and I've thought about this, Jim. I've given this some thought. It's kind of like I don't have a good analogy, but I mean, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. So it's kind of like, look, your chances have run out here. I had incredibly high hopes, and Graydon and I have talked about this here on the podcast many times before. I had incredibly high hopes for Andrew Fury and his government. I felt that when he was elected, that he had, during his leadership campaign, he said some incredibly inspiring things and hopeful things. I really thought, okay, well, maybe this is the guy. Maybe this is the guy that's actually going to make some tough decisions, who's going to bring out, some bipartisanship, who's going to work with everybody. And not only that, Jim, and Graydon, we've spoke about this before. Not only did we see what he said on the news, we've had personal conversations with the gentleman. Okay, like we've talked to the guy, and he's given these sentiments of, we want to work together, we need to work together, and a lot of rhetoric, aspirational things, and it's just that every single action, it feels like we've seen from him, has just been so contradictory to what he said. His words don't match up with his actions, and that's the disappointing part. So, to answer your question, what would I have to see? I would have to see some action here. I would have to see some bipartisan action. These consultations, that's going to be a big telling point. How are you going to do these? Who are you going to talk to? Are you just going to talk to liberals? Are you just going to take liberals' suggestions? Are you going to listen to the guys who donated to your leadership campaign, who you've never disclosed to us? Are you, what's going to happen here? Are you going to take suggestions from the NDP? Because I mean, you guys are raising issues and bringing good things to the forefront, right? So that would be where I would say, you know what, these guys are doing a good job.
Yeah. And I think that's going to be the key thing. I mean, one of the things I always enjoyed people, who had the contrarians, one who had the opposing views, and they challenge you every step of the way.
Yes.
I think it's not even about whether you're a liberal, NDP, LN Alliance, or anything like that, that independent, you name it. I think it also comes down to, I'll add something else to it. Yeah. You can't just be listening to, are you just listening to the Board of Trade? Are you also listening to labor unions? Are you also listening to poverty reduction groups? Mm-hmm. Are you listening to families who are trying to make a go of it? They're not in the farmers. Are you listening to? So to me, in many ways, you've got to look at you've got to be just a few people who are making a lot of money in the economy through investments and so on and so forth. They're not the only ones, because you know what, there are people out there who are working 2 or 3 jobs or more, minimum wage jobs, just to keep a family going. They're not, these are not entry-level jobs. This is what they depend on. So there are people without benefits. Let's take a look up in Ontario, the whole notion of sick leave. What they're realizing is that if you want to stop this the COVID outbreak and distract, you've got to have sick leave. Otherwise, you're forcing people the choice: do I stay home and starve, or do I take my chances? So you look at pharmacare, dental care. So somewhere along the line, I think, you've got to have a broader picture. My fear is that it will be a very narrow approach, because if Newfoundland requires a bold approach, then one of the things we suggested, and I go back to the Democrat or the elections thing, then let's bring people in and on that committee. That's bold. Let's do things differently.
And that's one of the questions I have about this PERT committee. We know the number of people that are on the committee and how varied they are in their backgrounds, but where has this research come from outside of the committee? What geographics were involved
That's the key.
outside of that committee,
Yeah.
or is it this small? And I think the question you asked, Rudy, I think my big concern is, and I will say this honestly, I mean, you know me, Jim. I mean, I love working with people. I can work with anyone.
Yeah.
But the thing with me is, up to this point, as an outsider looking in, I feel that with what has happened over the last number of years outside of the pandemic, but what has happened within government, and now we have a majority government, I feel that we have stepped backwards when it comes to getting these things done in the province and running this province, and the way we should have moved forward, engaging people. I think we have got a larger government. We have got a more top-heavy government. We have got central, like the Premier's office is where all the decisions seem to be made. And we have gone backwards so far in the democratic process in Newfoundland and Labrador.
I'll tell you one thing: with the minority government, there was a greater willingness on the part of government to talk,
absolutely,
and to compromise. Maybe for their own ends, but there was that. That's gone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I think it goes back, Jim, to what you said earlier with the Justice Minister coming out and saying, I haven't decided that yet. That's language that we hear, that we've heard so many times, particularly in is my prerogative and my prerogative alone when I'm going to announce this election. And I mean, I think that's the attitude that a lot of people are turned off by, the fact that, look, we're in some dire straits here. And the fact that Fred Hutton could be making all of the decisions potentially is a very, very unsettling thing when you think about it going to sleep at night. One person is not, this province is much bigger than one person, no matter how big their ego is. And I just feel that, we need to start opening up those communication lines.
Look, I'm going to say I'm guaranteed that there are a lot of issues that the three of us that I would disagree, Rudy, with you and with you, Graydon. But I'm also guaranteed that there are going to be issues where we're close aligned on that. But I do believe this is that somewhere in between all of that, there's a solution there that we can reach some compromise. That to me is no one person. I do believe this. No one person has an answer to this, to the mess we're in, and it's great to say it's going to take us a while to get out of it, but we had better do this together and do it slow if we have to, but do it and make sure it's done right.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, Jim, Jim, I've enjoyed this conversation tonight. I mean, this is I think this is an example of what the province needs, to be honest with you. People of differing views and differing ideas, and sitting down and just discussing it, and in a sensible manner. And I mean, I wish there was more of this in government, to be honest with you.
No, well, I enjoyed myself, so I certainly appreciate the invitation, gentlemen.
Yeah, for sure.
And Jim, keep being a go-getter. I've known you for a lot of years now. Be a warrior for the people like you've always been, and we're there.
I'll do my best, and you never know. Maybe we'll even get together and have part 2 of this conversation.
That would be incredible.
You name the time and place, sir, and we'll be there.
Perfect. Done.
And we just want to say that next week on TalkNL, we're going to have another very interesting conversation. We're going to be joined by the parents of Carter Churchill, Todd and Kimberly Churchill, who has been fighting on behalf of their child and the children across the province who are hearing impaired. And we're going to have them on TalkNL next week, and it's going to be a very interesting conversation for sure.
Good people they are. Take care, folks.
All right,
Take care,
folks.
Jim.
Have a great night, and talk to you again soon.
Guaranteed. Take care. Thanks very much, folks.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.